because both refuse to learn the lessons of history. Both, in fact, even though Wilson was a historian, both openly ignored the lessons of history. And it's about those lessons I want to talk with you this evening. For the lessons of history, just seen objectively as a classical historian, are: one, freedom is not a universal human value. Two, democracies and the spread of democratic freedom does not assure peace. Democracies, in fact, do not necessarily make good neighbors. And thirdly, our American traditions of freedom are unique and can, with only the greatest difficulty, be transported elsewhere. Each of these fundamental lessons of history, however, rest upon actually defining freedom. You know, Socrates tells us that the first step in doing anything is to define it. And freedom is a word we use all the time, think we know what we're talking about, and don't. Socrates, who was the citizen of the first democracy in history, Athens in the 5th century BC. Socrates went around Athens making himself very unpopular, ultimately getting executed, just going up to people and saying, you know, you're a judge. Is there a judge out here, an attorney? I won't. Not an attorney, is an attorney out here? Yeah. I won't call on you. Yes. What do you mean by justice? And, well,
there are many people who call the U.S. Department of Justice Department of Injustice.
You see there. And then he would ask you, what do you mean by piety? In fact, his pupil Plato wrote one of the great books on what is the theme of justice. And Socrates spent the time when he should have been preparing his speech for his trial, trying to tell Euthyphro. Euthyphro was bringing his father up on charges of murder out of piety, and showing that Euthyphro had never really thought about piety. So what does freedom mean? Freedom, in fact, consists of three components. Freedom is not an abstraction. It is realized in historical events and institutions. Freedom consists of political freedom, it consists of national freedom, and it consists of individual freedom. National freedom, political freedom, and individual freedom. National freedom is freedom from foreign domination. Political freedom is your freedom to vote, to hold office, to serve on a jury. And individual freedom is your freedom to live as you choose, as long as you harm no one else. Now, these three components are not necessarily mutually inclusive. You can have national freedom without political freedom and without individual freedom. You can have political freedom without national freedom. You can have individual freedom without national freedom and political freedom. I'll show you how if we just look at history or look at today. Iran has national freedom. It is free of foreign domination. Does it have political freedom? No. Does it have individual freedom? No. North Korea has national freedom. Does it have individual freedom? Does it have political freedom? Yes or no? No. Political freedom. It might well be said that Germany and Japan did not achieve political freedom and individual freedom until they had been conquered by us and their national freedom had disappeared. And the Roman Empire is a great example of individual freedom at a very high level, guarded by the empire, but with no political freedom of consequence and no national freedom. So these three components do not necessarily go together. And the most basic of them is national freedom. And time again, nations have been willing to subordinate political and individual freedom for national greatness. And one of the most terrifying examples is that of the Third Reich. The national freedom and greatness of Germany, and the utter subordination, the abolition of political freedom and individual freedom. So you first have to know what you're talking about. Then secondly, history just shows that freedom is not a universal value. people in all places and in all times have not wanted freedom. Time and time again, in fact, people and whole nations have chosen the perceived security of despotism to the awesome responsibility of self-government. It marks the very beginning of human history. 3000 BC, Mesopotamia in Egypt. An anonymous burst of creativity, brought about by an energy crisis, in fact. A drying up of the land and the inability to get enough water to feed people led them to pool their resources and to transfer all power to an absolute ruler who could mobilize the manpower to channel the Euphrates and the Tigris and the Nile. In Egypt, he was Pharaoh. His word was absolute law, and he was worshipped as a god. And in Mesopotamia, he was a king chosen by God, whose rule was absolute. In ancient Egyptian, that great civilization that built the pyramids, it was a happy civilization. There is not even a word in ancient Egyptian for freedom. China, civilization, glorious civilization beginning around 1700 BC. In classical Chinese, there's not a word for freedom. And the great teachings of Confucius, one of the noblest teachers of all time, is all about order, not about freedom. Order that comes down from a good ruler. In India, the great language of Sanskrit, its glorious poetry, there is freedom, but it is all about individual freedom to find spiritual liberation. So these great civilizations have risen and fallen without the kind of democratic freedom we think is necessary. Now, if James Madison could have come back to you today, he would say, why don't you know something about Greece and Rome? They were our great models. Athens, the first true democracy in history, and the Roman Republic. The values of Athens are much like our values. Pericles enunciated them in his funeral oration of 430 BC over those who had fallen in a preemptive war, in fact, that he had led them into against the evil regime of Sparta before Sparta could attack them. But we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Does that sound familiar? We are a government of laws. We respect the laws we pass and respect the laws that have come down to us from our own ancestors. We are a tolerant society. We do not disapprove of you because you have an alternative lifestyle. We don't even give you sour looks that might hurt your feelings. You are free to live as you choose here, live your lifestyle as long as you harm no one else. We are a free market economy. The goods of the whole world flow into us. And we enjoy them. We're not like the Spartans. We don't starve ourselves and go through all this military drill. We like to eat well. We surround ourselves with beauty and wisdom. And the best artists and scholars from the whole world come here to Athens. And we encourage immigrants to bring their skills here to Athens so our economy will flourish. And yet when the time comes, we are as brave as any on the field of battle. So those were the values of the Athenian democracy. We can embrace them. And yet, James Madison would tell you, Athens ended in failure and in dictatorship. And the Roman Republic, on which we modeled our Constitution, with its balance of power between a wise Senate and a powerful commander-in-chief, the consuls, ended in the dictatorship of Julius Caesar. And in fact, the outcome of the democracy in Athens and the Democratic Republic of Rome was not the spread of democracy to the whole world, but was rather 1,600 years of monarchy based on the idea that government comes from God and is bestowed upon the king. St. Paul a believer in democratic freedom? No. The powers that be are ordained of God. I gave a lecture to a wonderful audience in a town in America, and some people came up afterwards, and I talked about the American Revolution. They said, did you know the American Revolution was wrong? I said, well, no, I'm kind of surprised to hear you say it. No, they went against the word of Paul. The powers that be are ordained of God. So Christianity flourished in a society that rested upon a military dictatorship.